Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at goracing.ie.
And you're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing on Off the Ball. John Duggan here with you to talk about the Sport of Kings with great action at Punchestown, Cork and Cheltenham this weekend. Joined by two very special guests this week, our racing guru, Johnny Ward, as always, here to pick the winners and to give us some great insight into brilliant racing we have this weekend over the jumps. And on the flat, we've got a trainer, Patrick Prendergast. Patrick, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks, John. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks, Patrick. And when I think about the Prendergast name, it's just so synonymous with racing. You know, you got Kevin, your uncle, PJ, your grandfather, who was the first Irishman to be a champion flat trainer in England in the 1960s, your dad, Paddy, and yourself, Patrick. And I suppose you've known nothing different, Patrick.
No, there's a history there, all right. Horses would have been very hard to avoid, you know.
So what's your kind of first memory of you know, when you're growing up and you're involved in horses? You must be just a very small boy at that stage. I actually, my early memories are I grew up on a stud farm. It was a stud farm built by my grandfather called Meadow Court, and I grew up there. So my early life, I actually was more interested in the breeding side, the mares and foals and that, and I used to love the foaling and that. So that's my childhood really, was knocking around the stud. And even I think with your dad, you remember there's some characters in the yard, a horse called McGillicuddy. Maybe you might give us a bit of insight into him. I was reading about him. That's
right, yeah. I did mention that to the press one day. There was a handicapper called McGillicuddy in the yard, and you know, as the handicappers, as they get older, they get a bit cuter, so anything you can do to keep them sweet. And McGillicuddy, you know, he didn't stay the 2 miles over hurls, so, but if he did, he would have won. He would have been very good because he loved jumping hurls. So sometimes we'd give him a pop on the way to the races. In those days, we'd tack him up, we'd ride him up to the track, and we'd pop a couple of hurls, whip the tack off him, and put the racing gear on him, and he'd run. And I think we did, I don't know, we did it one day and it worked. He won. So then we had it in our head, we have to do this. But one day, one of the good riders, I think, wasn't available at the time. So I was told to bring him up and jump the first hurl. I think I fell out over his head at the second hurl. Horse ran loose, went up to the track. I think my father had a few quid in him, and I was too cowardly to tell him the horse was after covering half the Curragh, galloping half the Curragh, but the horse won. That's right. I was telling the press that one day about that story.
And you got into training then, Patrick, and you're, I think maybe appropriately at the time, a horse called Be Patient, I think was your first winner in Galway, 2002.
That's right. Johnny Murtagh rode my first winner in Galway.
Now he's beating you at the track, and you were beating him.
Yeah, and we're neighbours. There's no avoiding each other. We're only a couple of 100 yards away from each other, but it's you know, he was very good on her that day, and it's your first winner. It's a special day. It's a day you'll never forget. But I had been an assistant trainer, so I had saddled a lot of winners, and I saddled a lot of big winners. But that little winner in Galway was a big deal to me. And
as well, Patrick, when you're working with people like Michael Stout and Ed Dunlop and Dermot Welch and Jim Bulger, is there a common theme or a common lesson that you could impart to people about working with horses that you learned along the years? Is anything consistent about that?
Well, they're all clever men, and I think they were all very good delegators, and I do believe these men would have been very successful in a lot of different walks of life because they were just good managers, good delegators, and obviously they're good trainers, but you know, the places were just run very well. You know.
You're with Jean-Claude Rouget as well, were you?
I was, but I was only there when I was a schoolboy. I was, I wasn't doing overly well in my French exams in school. So
you went to a French trainer to learn French?
Well, that was the compromise, you know. A lot
in all ways of life, in all French ways of life.
But that was the compromise, you know. Some of my classmates were going to the Gaeltacht, I think, at the time, or French college, and I didn't want to go to French college, so I went down to Jean-Claude Rouget. That's where I spend my summers, and you know, it just showed. When I came back to school, the same application I gave to my French studies as I did beforehand, but it just shows you when you immerse yourself in French. I never had a problem again, you know. But it was great down there. Po was beautiful down there.
It's funny how it comes back to you as well when you learn French and you think, oh, I'm very rusty on it, and then when you turn up to something, like you turn up at a train station and Allez Sample or Allez Retour comes back, or I'm sure, you know, if you wanted to put I don't know what it's like to have a bet over in France like that with the Paris Mutuel and all that, but I'm sure it'll all come back to you, all the
it would.
Terminology.
Well, I have rough French, yard French I would call it, and rough French, but as I say, immersion is the key really. If I was to go back there, I think if anyone, it wouldn't take you long, you know, you wouldn't starve.
You went to Australia as well, so you were...
Never in Australia.
You didn't go to Australia, so...
I was in America.
So...
I was in California.
Sorry, so that was also with the view to sort of maybe learn new things about how they do it in maybe different jurisdictions, was it? Or?
It was. Well, my father trained his first winner in America, and he was an assistant trainer in America to a fella called Sonny Jins Fitzsimmons, which is a Hall of Famer, very, very famous trainer, and he trained his first winner in America. So I just wanted to see how things were done out there, and at the time, you know, I was just about light enough to get some track work, you know, and but I was more interested in how things worked on the backstretch and the feeding and everything. But I wasn't there. Plans didn't go. It didn't go as I planned, because I had a fall off a horse out there, and I broke my pelvis and broke a few. So I actually came home, and while I was at home and I was recovering, I was writing letters to trainers in England, you know.
What age are you then?
I was in my early 20s. Yeah, I was in my early 20s, but I knew, you know, that was the end of riding horses anyway, you know. So I said I'm going to have to get a trainer to take me on to do something else around the yard.
And you've experienced the ups and downs of training. Of course, you had an economic downturn. It hit the jumps, it hit the flat, and so you know what it's like to come out the other end and have the success you've had recently. Yeah,
I had a good start. It was maybe a little slow, but I had a good start. I said 2005. I had a very good filly called Waterways, and I think
that's hard to believe. That's that long ago.
I know.
Yeah, it's 13 years. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at a picture the other day. I had brown hair, but training horses soon sorted that out.
Yeah.
And
otherwise, you look fresh anyway. You know, a little bit grey.
Well, I don't feel too fresh. Yeah. I was at the Cartier Awards this week, and so I don't feel too fresh.
You never get a hangover when you're celebrating something. I find, like, you can always get through it, like, because you just look back and, well, that was worth it.
That's adrenaline. Yeah, that's adrenaline.
Well, you're talking about the Cartier Awards there, and the reason you were there, Patrick, is because of a horse called Skitter Scatter, and this was a horse that won the Grade 1 Moiglair Stakes at the Curragh, a 2-year-old filly. Let's hear about that great day.
The 3 in the Moiglair Stud Stakes, main edition, with Lady Kaya coming there on the near side. Then comes Zagatova, Angelic Light, Skitter Scatter. Beyond Reason is next with Just Wonderful, racing now towards the final furlong and a half, and it's on the near side in the purple and white jacket, Lady Kaya and Robbie Colgan, who come to the front from main edition. And then comes Zagatova. Skitter Scatter is running on over on the far side. They got 150 yards to go, and it's Lady Kaya with Skitter Scatter coming on the far side, and as they run to the finish, Skitter Scatter, it's a champion Sunday to savour for Ronan Whelan and Patrick Prendergast.
Does it still give you a buzz, Patrick?
Get you over your hangover.
Well, no, I didn't say hangover. I said tired. But it still gives me a buzz, I think. You know.
How many times have you watched it? Roughly.
It's very sad. The answer is, you'd say get a life.
Most people wait till Christmas Day, and you've already used up all of that. So you won't be watching Christmas Day.
I give videos to everyone for Christmas. Skitter Scatter winning the Moiglair. But no, I've watched it a lot, yeah.
Tell us about the horse, when you got her, and the background to the horse.
She was sent to me by Sonia and Anthony Rogers of Early Stud, and when she arrived in the yard, obviously, you know, she wasn't overly big, and she wasn't overly impressive to look at, but she was
Boy Scout Daddy at the very least.
She was Boy Scout Daddy. He was, as I say, brilliant. He's no longer alive, but he's a brilliant sire.
So he's the sire, he's the father, and the mother is Dane Street.
American-based sire, and Dane Street. Be an excellent line as well, intense focus family, and that, so be an excellent. So she had as I say, she arrived in and she had a better pedigree than what I would normally get, or one of the better pedigrees that, you know. So any trainer would have gladly rolled out the red carpet for her pedigree.
So she won the Group 2 Debutante Stakes at the Curragh. When that happened, Patrick, did you know, I've got something special here?
At times I thought she'd reached her level, you know, during the year. And the big question was, you know, how would she cope with the step up and trip? And the Silver Flash, we were delighted with that. But the real day that I kind of thought was very, very impressed with her was, as you say, the debutante. She seemed to take the step up and trip with real relish. You know, if anything, I was thinking to myself, God, I could run her over a mile the next day.
Did you think at that time there was talk that Aidan O'Brien's horses were under a cloud, and I think he ran, Hermosa ran in the race, I think.
Yeah.
I think he might have run 3 in it, and they were all, I think they were probably all like similar Galileo types, but I remember thinking that day Skitter Scatter just might be a bit flattered because Aidan's horses are under a bit of a cloud, and it turned out that basically I was wrong. But did you think at that stage I might have kind of gotten away with one here because maybe the opposition is slightly below par, or did you think actually no, this is just improvement?
Oh, well, no, that did go through my head, there's no doubt. And, you know, I knew Aidan's weren't, and they weren't flying on all cylinders, and sure, Aidan made no secret of that, but sure, you kind of think at the time, sure, I'll make hay while the sun shines, but she just kept improving, and when fillies start improving, there's just no way of ever knowing when it's going to end, and, you know, hopefully she'll keep improving.
And we're talking about the 1,000 guineas now.
Yeah,
Patrick.
Yeah, that's the logical step. There might be a Guineas trial on the way.
Newmarket or the Curragh?
Well, when I say Guineas, I think the Curragh because it's local to me. But ground will be a big factor. I'd be very reluctant to run her on heavy ground. So, you know, a lot of these decisions will be made closer to the day. But either one would do me.
I was down in Goffs there with Owen Sheehan for the Orby sale. Yeah. And there was a horse that went for 3.2 million. Have you had, like probably for the owners more so than yourself, but big interest now in the Skitter Scatter from the, you know, the Coolmores and the Sheikhs and that?
Well, there was offers all along. You know, there was offers for her when she won her maiden in Dundalk. You know,
and I'll never forgive her that day because everyone was backing this hot pot that Aidan O'Brien had that couldn't be beaten, and he travelled like an absolute dream, called Sergei Prokofiev.
That's right.
He just ran into Skitter Scatter. It was an unbelievably good maiden for Dundalk.
It was, and the Irish Rover was third.
Yeah.
And I can tell you a story against myself. I remember there was only a small little field, and of course we're circling to go in the ring, and she's a filly, and the 2 colts are there, and they're impressive beasts. You know, you've seen them in the ring.
Daddy as well.
Yeah, but they're big, impressive horses. They would have made 2 of her, and I remember just looking at it and saying, "Oh God, if I could just sneak my filly back on the trailer, I'd head off home." You know, but no, she was very brave and gutsy that day. But again, we were thinking, you know, Aidan's always improved for a run, and did I catch him cold? But it was her attitude is what I loved that day.
She could have been sold at any stage then?
Yeah, no, the whole way through. And but thankfully, Sonia and Anthony, you know, they're always saying, but they always had a real fondness for this filly and a liking for her. And as I say, they have a beautiful stud, and this filly fits the bill. So if they were to ask, you know, the money they were offered, but if they were to ask an agent to go buy them a Skitter Scatter, you know, that's what it would cost too, you know, or more so, you know. So they had kind of the product they were looking for. In
terms of her physique, how much of an impediment is it with a view to her 3-year-old career in your mind, or could she prove anomalous in that regard? I don't think it has too much of a relevance, because it's not as if, you know, it's not as if they're going to be carrying any bigger weights as 3-year-olds, same kind of weights, same opposition. And whereas, you know, she has grown a little. She's over 15-1 now. She has grown a little, and her heart is big enough for the game, you know. And you can imagine down the line, we'll say if she retires at 3 or retires at 4, being by Scat Daddy, the clamour to get her and foal to a proper stallion on another line, and the potential there. Well, I think every horseman would be delighted to
train her progeny, because if she passes on her attitude, her personality, if she passes on that alone, they're going to be desirable.
You can imagine a little mating with Galileo, what that might produce, considering the constitution on both sides.
Exactly, something like that.
And you could train it as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So, Patrick, when you've got a horse like this, it's so exciting. Skitter Scatter, does that make you be the first person at her stable door every morning and the last person at night? Are you having sleepless nights about her well-being, or does it work like that? Or?
No, I don't overly worry, because what'll be will be, and me fretting and stressing and annoying her, we'd often do our best to treat them all the same, because as well as that, if you start wrapping them in real cotton wool, sure, that doesn't work either. They are athletes. They got to be fit. She's got to be fit, and she's got to be exercised every day. So I think if we got obsessed like that, so it wouldn't work. Obviously she's minded, and but no, we don't stress that way at all. And I've got some very good staff, and I rely on them, and they probably stress a little bit too about her, but not overly so. No, what'll be will be that way.
I remember after she won the Moigler, I was talking to Dave Keane, because Dave and...
He's an Irish journalist.
Yeah, and Ronan Whelan obviously rode her, one of the absolute gents of the game, and Dave obviously would have represented Ronan as an agent, but I was looking for a bit of an angle for a colour story, and he started telling me that the guy who looked after Skitter Scatter was from Georgia. I was like, how does a fellow from Georgia end up...
Not the USA, the former Soviet version.
Exactly, yeah.
I've been there, bizarrely.
Yeah, so have I.
We had this discussion, I think, on another show.
I went over to watch an Ireland game that was called off.
That's right,
which is typical enough. But I had fondness for Georgia, and it certainly didn't appeal to me as a racing country, because for whatever, it's just as racing... I never remember any racing kind of relevance over there, but you've a guy from Georgia looking after her and absolutely loves her.
I do. Pat looks after her. He's from Georgia, and he was a jockey in Georgia, but obviously there would be no money in it and that. But he's a very intelligent fella. His parents are academics, and I'd say to the dismay, he was all he wanted to do was ride horses in Georgia. But he made his way from Georgia. He ended up in Sir Mark Prescott's, and
he upped his game and went to you.
Well, I don't know about that, but he found his way. He found his way to Ireland. I have some dealings with Sir Mark, and we discussed him and Willie Butler's assistant, and they kind of squared him up to me. So, but no, he's very, very good, and he's been a big factor in Skitter Scatter. As Pat is a head man in the yard. My other head man is a Spanish guy, Joe, and they're both very, very good horsemen, and they're hard workers, and those guys they can be the difference between a yard doing well and not.
I remember before the Moigler, he was saying how Ronan Whelan was riding a particular horse, good horse,
yes,
and he was riding Skitter Scatter Pata. And Ronan was barely looking at the horse under him. He was just constantly looking over to see how Pata was travelling on Skitter Scatter, and then he had a big smile in his face when he saw how well she was going.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's a fact. Ronan was riding a nice filly, and she's a 3-year-old. And Ronan would be lighter than Pata. So that's the weights are wrong, and that and that filly. So not a bad filly, and Skitter Scatter went particularly well that morning. So the two boys were beaming, but sure, the fellow who's on the other horse shouldn't be beaming, but the two of them were beaming. Yeah,
it was all for the greater good.
Yeah, I remember that morning well. Yeah.
So the ambition now, Patrick, is it just to get a small select coterie of good horses, young horses, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and bring them on? I was reading the horse that won by 14 lengths in Tipperary back in May. is a 6 Heavy.
MM6 Heavy, yeah.
Can that horse flourish as it gets older?
I think so. I think so. She was sent to me by Italian owners that are based in Fonstown, Natai, Maxim and Wella, and she cost them €1,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, sure, you wouldn't be overly excited, a €1,000 filly coming into the yard, but they loved her, and she was a Dragon Pulse, and I think it was Gary Swift at the National Stud introduced me to them, and she came in and she won her maiden 14 lengths, and she's owned by Phoenix Thoroughbreds now. They purchased her off Max and Manuela, and there's nothing wrong with her this year.
Samir Abdulaziz, That's Amir Abdulaziz, from
Bahrain. Yeah. So they own her now, but she is she loves soft ground, and of course we had a very and the programme is difficult. Johnny will tell you this. The programme's very difficult to place a 3-year-old sprint. Struggle against England because sprinters need match practice, but 3-year-old sprinters, they win their maiden. Hard to place them.
Rocking a hard place.
Yeah, it is. And when a race would pop up, the ground was fast, so I didn't get to run her again. And then, sod's law, back end of the year when the rain did come, I think she got cast or had some kind of stalls injury that no one witnessed, but she just hit her hock, x-rays clean, but so she missed the season, and of course she can't go up to Dundalk because it's a fastish surface too, so we'll have to wait till the March or April for her. But time will tell what she is. I don't really know. She's won her maiden 14 lengths, and I thought at the time that must have been a bad maiden, but there's been winners come out of it. So remains to be seen, but yeah, I'd be looking forward to a running, that's for sure, yeah.
I'm getting the sense through this conversation, Patrick and Johnny, that owners, breeders, staff, good relationships are important for you to do what you're doing.
There is, and communication is the most important thing, really, because it's, there's plenty of bad news. There's plenty of bad news, and sure, we'd all be guilty of that, including myself. No one likes to ring up and give bad news. It's easy to ring up and say your horse is flying, and I think and he won, and congratulations, he's just after winning. But there's more bad news than good news, so it's important not to shirk from that. And of course, likewise, my staff have to bring me bad news. Horses have temperatures, our horse didn't eat up, and they tend to do that when they're entered up. I often think horses seem to have a sixth sense of when they're entered, and that's when things go wrong.
Yeah, we mentioned Dave Keane as well. The success you had with Cedars of Lebanon was quite incredible. Another, I suppose, not a particularly fashionable filly, but just really hardy and had a blinding year.
Yeah, I bought her myself at Fairyhouse, and it was on a whim, and I brought her home. And
when you're buying a whim, then are you like, you kind of doubting yourself?
Well, you're thinking, oh God,
is this a waste?
No, the first thing you're thinking is this invoice will this one will nearly beat me home, and then I'll be fixing it. And what am I going to do? But Sean Graney, who's he's an owner in the yard. He's Chris Hayes' uncle, and he's very lucky owner with me. And he had Queen Blossom. Filly was a good filly, and he had a King Christophe and a few others like that. And so he's been lucky. And I always said to Sean, his colours are lucky. So Sean took some of her, and Dave Keane took a leg of her. And sure, I'd be on to Dave a lot. Obviously he's Ronan's agent, but Dave works hard at it, so I'd often ring and ask him how he thinks a race might cut up or that, So Dave has been a help to me. So I'm delighted that Cedars 11 on repaid him in spades, because she's after winning 3 this year, and that's not easy done with a 2-year-old in Ireland.
Every time I'm in the Cedar 3 restaurant, I think of her. But I think the success you had, that Jessica Harrington had this year, that Ken Condon has been huge for Irish racing, because it's like, as much as Aidan O'Brien is a genius, as much as a gentleman, ditto Willie Mullins, and when Brian Cody, Kenny were winning all around him.
We need stories,
and we needed the underdog to win, and that this year was particularly special, and it's gotten to the stage now where flat racing looks a lot more egalitarian than jumps racing, for whatever reason, because of various factors, particularly store horses being bought by the same kind of connections. But flat racing has become, and you look at the balloting situation now, the amount of owners who have flat runners and want runners in the flat.
That's right. Well, it's actually gone very expensive to compete National Hunt. Not only are they gone very hard to buy, it takes longer. It takes longer to get them tracked, takes longer to find out are they any good or not. So, even though I'm very fond of the National Hunt, and my father had great success National Hunt, and I'd never say never, but just commercially, the flat, I just saw at the time, I just thought it might be easier to make a living.
Well, let's see if we can make a bit of a living over the next couple of days through the National Hunt. But I'm thrilled that you've been in here this afternoon, Patrick, and giving us your insight on what's been a great season with Skitter Scatter, and brilliant story. Johnny, let's look ahead to the weekend.
What a weekend we have.
Oh, this is great. Grade 2, Craddockstown, Novice Chase at Punchestown. That's at 1:10 tomorrow. And the Bedfixter Gold Cup tomorrow at Cheltenham at 2:25. In the Craddockstown, Johnny, 6 declared, but it seems to be down to 4. The favourite, Cadmium, Voix de Rêve, Mind's Eye and Hardline. What do you make of it?
Yeah, it's a cracker. I think initially in the betting for this, Voix de Rêve was short price favourite because I guess they thought, Ruby would end up riding it. Ruby's actually riding Cadmium now. So Voix de Rêve was himself and Campiador, if you remember, they fell independently in the Fred Winter, and an awful lot of Irish would have backed one or the other. And it's one of these, until this day, nobody knows what would have happened, but he took to chasing really seamlessly at Galway. He was absolutely brilliant. He bolted up. Mind's Eye was second, travelled well. He left him for dead. I thought that was a really good performance. Mind's Eye won since, albeit he was entitled to. I think Voix de Rêve could take a bit of beating here, and the fact that Ruby, who's having a difficult November so far, he needs a bit of a turn of, needs a change of luck. He might have it here, but at the prices, I'd be with Voix de Rêve. I think he's a very good horse.
So in the Bedfixter Gold Cup, there's 20 horses. This is, I think it used to be called the Macassin or something back in the day at Cheltenham. It's one of these legendary races, 2.5 miles at Cheltenham. Kind of used to be the Martin Pipe Benefit. Used to be a really big start of the National Hunt season, Johnny. And I'm looking at the market here. I'm seeing Mr. Whitaker for McChannon. The favourite is Rather Be for Nicky Henderson. Calandra for Neil Mulholland. So a lot of support for him, and also a good word for King Socks, with Tom Scudamore talking of his chances. But it is 20 runners. It is an each-way race. What do you make of it? I
should mention David Jennings, my journalistic colleague. He's having his stag over in Cheltenham. What a way to have a stag, a 3-day Cheltenham meeting, and he's over there with a load of Gaelic players, I think. So they'll have to stay the Eider trip to get through that weekend. But you mentioned David Pipe. With all due respect to David, the yard probably isn't as feared as much as it was when Martin was in his pomp, because he was a complete innovator.
He also had the owners, David Johnson, Terry Neal as well. Back in the day.
David Johnson, massive loss to the game, and gentleman owner, and I'd have fond memories of his horses running, particularly when Timmy Murphy became his stable jockey. He was a huge fan of Timmy Murphy, but I suppose Martin obviously is getting on. I'm not sure what his role is anymore, but David has to obviously go his own role. But King Socks is still very, very interesting. I can't but feel he'd love to win this race. And when he ran behind the Storyteller at Cheltenham, he was well fancied. He did very little wrong on the day. He just flattened out a bit, but
also softer ground than we'll encounter this weekend.
You remember at Cheltenham, John? I've never seen anything like it for Cheltenham.
It wasn't the heaviest ground since 1982.
Yeah, and it was so bleak going into the festival the Monday beforehand. It was just it got so much rain. I was afraid that some horses might be rerouted, but he ran really well in the context. He's had a wind operation. A wind operation and a tongue tie for the first time, so you can kind of draw your own conclusions from that. But he's a horse of a lot of ability. When he ran in France, he ran behind Footpad in a particularly interesting bit of form that renders him potentially well in off 10 stone 4. He was disappointing at Aintree, I'll give him that, but he could be, if David...
New season 11, 12 to 1.
Yeah, exactly, and the horses from the yard are in good fettle. So he's a hopeful selection in a cracking race. It's going to be a good race. This.
Are you a fan of the jumps? Are you to watch it more so than is it almost a bit like if the flat racing, Patrick, is business? Is this more fun for you watching the jumps?
I love good jump racing. I've attended Cheltenham a few times and that, but I don't study it. And that's probably because it's not my living.
It's McGillicuddy.
Yeah, I don't study it, but I enjoy it. I enjoy it, especially looking at good horses.
Now, a good horse that is a bit of a beginning to become a little bit of an enigma, possibly, is Sam Crow, running on Sunday in the Morgiana Hurdle. Huge race in the Irish racing in the season, the start of the new season. Odds on with Ball Sports, I think it says 6 to 4 on. Johnny Ward, the verdict for you so far on Sam Crow? Is he a bit lazy, or is it just that he needed the run the last day at Down Royal, or what is it?
I think he needed the run. He was 1 to 2 in the betting coming towards the off, which he was not entitled to be unless there was something in the sense of how much he needed the run. I think, in fairness with Sam Crow, it's going to be a long season, so this was a means to an end. As fit as it could get him, Eddie O'Leary said subsequently he didn't think he'd win. So if you're to take that as face value, you know, I was at a christening last Sunday, and in Newbridge, my hometown, and they've restored the church, and it's a job like that Dermot Bannon will be proud of. They've done a spectacular job on this church.
Where is this going, Johnny?
I was in there, and I'm basically an atheist, right? But I was in the church, and I was like, you know, this would nearly restore my faith in kind of going to mass, because this is just a staggeringly beautiful building, and there's a lovely sense of harmony there. I would nearly go full throttle if these two do line up, Sam Crow and Faugheen. If they do turn up, I'll pray to God, and I'll say, God, thank you do exist, because this will be a race for the ages. And I just feel that they won't. I think the ground will rule one of them out, probably Sam Crow. It's unbelievably warm out there for mid-November. Like, you could literally walk around in a T-shirt. How much watering are they going to do? You know, as I was saying on Twitter, I think they'll put holy water on the track to get this race to happen.
From that church.
From that church. But like, for racing, you know, Patrick, this would be it'd be great, because these are maybe the two most popular horses in training in Ireland, full stop. And to see them run against each other, Faugheen getting on in years, I think it'd be special.
It would, and racing needs these household names. You know, it's very, very important. You know, and jumping can do that more than the flat. You know, because these horses come back campaign after campaign. So, you know, as I said to you before, I love to see good horses. You know, love to see good horses. Good horses get the blood pumping.
Absolutely. Super Sunday as well, we can't forget, for Jessica Harrington in a field of 6. Won the Punchestown and the Leopardstown Champion hurdles. But is 2 miles his best trip, possibly?
No, it probably isn't. But as a punter, particularly for these big races, it's kind of a philosophy in life itself. If you keep listening to something over and over, you start believing that it's true. So for races like this, all you'll hear about is Sam Crow and Faugheen, and you'll basically stop remembering that there are other horses in the race, like Super Sunday, who's a proper Grade 1 horse, Galileo horse, who has a lot of speed for a 3-miler and is well entitled to his place there. Now, Faugheen was disappointing at times last season, so Super Sunday could well pick up the pieces. And even though he's one of these really versatile horses who would have very good form at 2 miles, but stays 3 miles, and he's well worth his place. So even if Sam Crow doesn't turn up, it's still a very good race, and I wouldn't rule him out at all.
Okay, Johnny, call it.
Sam Crow if he runs. If he doesn't, I'd probably back Super Sunday at the likely prices, because Faugheen will be very, very short. And if you look at him at Punchestown last year, he was extraordinary over 3 miles. I'd imagine that's the trip they'll end up going with him this season. But I think Sam Crow will come on a fair bit from the last day. If he's beaten, he might go over fences.
And just before we come to your bet, Johnny, we'll look at Cheltenham on Sunday. The Grade 2 slower chase at 2:25, the Grade 1 hurdle at 3 o'clock, 20 runners to care for that one. For the slower chase, Sco Royal for Alan King, that's the 6-4 favourite. Nicky Henderson's Brain Power is closest challenger in the market. I suppose, Johnny, we're looking at potential champion chase contenders to this one. Yeah,
we are. I don't think Anton's going to beat Altior, to be honest, the way he's doing it. You know, if he can stay sound, and hopefully he will. I was on a little race and post preview before here, and Tom Malone presenting said, I think he gave his bet of the weekend as Brain Power. Which is quite ironic, really, because if you had Brain Power, I don't think you'd be back in Brain Power.
Yeah, to me, he's a flat track horse.
He's very quirky, and Danny Mullins was beside us, and Danny started laughing. And if David Mullins had been beside us, who regularly rides this horse, I'd like to know what he would have thought. But he's a lot of ability at the same time if he puts it in. But So Royale he's not the biggest horse in the world, but that didn't stop Skitter Scatter, and it didn't stop him last season. He's a lovely strong travelling chaser who I think will take a bit of beat, and I couldn't go near Brain Power. I'd prefer to back something else in the race, maybe, you know, the likes of Forrest Behan. Maybe he's had a wind operation as well, and Le President is still a very good horse in his day, goes well around Cheltenham, but So Royale is
Festival last as well,
absolutely.
Last March,
seemed a long time ago now, the last race, but I couldn't go with it. Brain Power's had a wind operation, no surprise, he's had his problems, but So Royale should return in good form. He's only a 6-year-old, still plenty of time, and I could see him running very well at Cheltenham behind Altior come March.
The Great Wood Hurdle, Johnny, 20 runners of Verdana Blues, won the last 2 starts for Nicky Henderson. Does that make him a worthy favourite in your view, or is there anything each way that you might point us in the direction of it?
I'd be interested to know Patrick's view on this, because she's a 6-year-old mare who, under her penalty, is carrying 11 stone 11 in a handicap. Now, I was talking to connections of Shattered Love, and they're talking of going down the Dawn Run route and maybe hopefully aiming her at the Gold Cup. But Shattered Love is massive, so I wouldn't worry about any weight for her. But as a mare, 11-11 in a handicap of this stature, would it worry you?
Well, I don't know.
Physique.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what really counts. That's what, of course, attitude counts, but our physique, because some of these mares would be bigger and stronger than the colts or geldings. As you see, even on the flat, you saw Jesse's guess. Yeah, bigger than nearly every colt this year. So sex would be irrelevant. It'd be more to do with their stature and their weight.
Have you picked one out for the race?
Yeah, I'm with I don't know how many times I mentioned wind operations today alone. Even the last minutes, you're talking about 5 horses. Nube Negra comes into that category as well. Could you actually explain to the listeners what a wind op will likely do to a horse? Because I think a lot of people in racing, even I don't fully understand it myself, but how likely is it to succeed?
Well, you need a vet to answer this question properly, but you know, if you're going punting, you could do without it really. And I would say that the further the trip or the bigger the test on stamina, like heavy ground, you know, where I'm getting the sprinters will get away with it a bit more, because even bring it back to human terms, I think I have read that some of these 100-meter sprinters, they barely take a breath. Maybe they want to, you know, take a fill up and they just runs, and it can be the same in the flat. So you know, but as I say, the further the horses are running, or the bigger the test of stamina, the more relevant their wind is. And there's different types of wind operations. Some of them are far more severe than others. There's hob days and tie forwards and tie backs and that. And when you see horses tongue tied down, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're really in trouble. It can be, some horses can get in the habit of putting their tongue over the bit, and makes it very hard to steer or brake. So that can be a factor too. But and sometimes the horse would have a wind operation and the trainer would put a tongue strap on to be sure, if you know what I mean.
Which we mentioned even earlier with one of the horses, yeah.
So give us an each way.
Yeah, Nube Negra. Dan
Skelton.
4-year-old. Yeah, Dan Skelton obviously would have come from the Paul Nicholls yard, and Paul Nicholls was a big believer in wind operations, so he's probably just kind of embraced that himself. But this horse travels very well. 4-year-olds have actually a very good record in this race for handicap. Won 3 of the last 5 or 6. This horse was 4th in the Fred Winter, travelled like a dream, and I'd imagine this was sort of the aim, since he's a very strong traveller.
Oh, so Nube Negra for Johnny in the Grade 1 hurdle. We also pretty good confidence behind King Sox in the Betfred Gold Cup at Cheltenham tomorrow. I would also agree with that. I think King Sox is a very good each way bet around the 11 or 12 to 1 mark. West Approach is also a horse I noticed in that race on tomorrow at Cheltenham. But the bet this week, Johnny, remember Friday Night Racing brought to you with Off the Ball and brought to you as well with GoRacing.ie, trying to make some money. Wonderlate 10 to 9 on.
Yeah, everyone keeps giving out when I have a winner because it was a short price.
No, I was just giving the facts here. Yeah. It was
more Jar Gilroy than you, actually.
No. I mean, a winner is a winner. A 10 to 9 on winner is better than 100 to 1 loser. So
absolutely,
I'm all for the winners. So 3 winners in a row. That's good. That's good going, folks. You want to be listening very carefully to what Johnny's going to give you this week. This €100 bet with the tote. This horse is by Walk in the Park, who was the sire of Douvan and Min, and there was massive clamour for this horse. It was a stallion based in France, son of Monjou, but hasn't actually produced much of note at all since those 2 in Ireland. But at a more modest level, Tony Martin's horse Clementina runs in the 120 at Cork. Big fan of the jockey Owen O'Connell, who's, I think, dad's Eamon O'Connell had a winner yesterday, a really underrated trainer, great little family from Tipperary. But Owen's a really, really promising rider. This is a race for conditionals, and I think this horse, well handicapped, has run well here in the past. Tony Martin's horses are coming back into form, and just on Nube Negra, the strange thing about this horse, it was actually bred in Spain. Which is, you were mentioning one of your, which is a strange one. You don't see that very often for a jumps horse, but it's a strange game, because before we came on, Patrick was asking me how did Jenkins get on at Cheltenham. I have no idea why he had an interest in this 7 or 8 year old chaser at Cheltenham, but he had him as a yearling. So it's just strange the way racing goes, but it's a small world, it's a small family. Yeah. To make a long story short, Clementina is the bet for the weekend with the tote, and the tote are guaranteeing the price to the SP at Cheltenham and Punchestown this weekend. So remember, the tote.com, That's where you want to be going, or the Toast social media account, to see what dividend Johnny's winner, because he's going to get 4 in a row, pays if that comes in.
Very confident, John.
That Clementine, well, I'm behind you.
Yeah.
Clementine in the 120 at Cork on Sunday. So thanks to the Tote.com for that bet. We're going to try and make some more money for the Irish Injured Jockeys Fund. 1,485 in the pot. We're not even near Leopard's Town at Christmas yet on Friday Night Racing here with Off the Ball. Thanks to GoRacing.ie. Patrick, loved having your company. Thanks so much for coming in this week. Are you going to have a lazy winter now? You've done all the work. Skitter Scatter's won a Group 1. You've had the Cartier Award. But I suppose really it's a 24/7, 365 job, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but we will have a few days out. I'm going to New Zealand match, Ireland match tomorrow.
How did you get tickets for that? Unbelievable. How did you get tickets for that? You're a horse racing trainer.
He's a Cartier Award winner.
Maybe it was the Cartier Award winner.
Did they give you a nice watch? Or?
No, people have asked me that. My wife would have been delighted if I got a Cartier watch. I probably would have been on eBay by now. But no, the owners got a lovely trophy. But how did I get tickets for the match? It's an old school pal produced them, and I just said yes.
What did I say at the start of the show? That it's about relationships in life. It's about relationships, owners, old school pals, breeders, punters. So Patrick Prendergast, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Johnny Ward, I've got every confidence in you in these tips. King Socks and Nube Negra.
We never asked you, Sam Crow or Faugheen?
Sam Crow. Faugheen, 10-year-old over 2 miles. Coming back, no, not with Faugheen. Great day, Punchestown over the 3 miles, but not for me this weekend. That's it for this week's edition of Friday Night Racing. Next week, we're going to look ahead to action at Gowran Park, Navan, Haydock and Ascot. So join us then, and thanks for watching and listening today.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off. Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at GoRacing.ie.